There's a few elements to the CAMS model that are kind of vital to be in any approach to addressing suicide. So it has a risk assessment. In other words, looking at the things that are present that would increase a perception of how likely it is the person is going to die by suicide. A risk management strategy, so knowing a bit about things like safety planning, reducing access to lethal means, managing suicidal crises or those moments when agitation, perturbation, kind of high emotive arousal are at their peak, and being able to survive kind of crises moments. Alongside that, you would also have an exploration of drivers. So what issues are pushing suicide for you? And that's different for every person. So it requires a different flexibility to be able to see, well, this person's suicide is around access to housing. This person's suicide is around their childhood abuse. This person's suicide is around the rows they're having with their wife. This person's suicide is about their depression. And the list is endless. So being able to accommodate a way of linking suicide to whatever it is relevant to for that person is very important. And then another piece that's really vital is the idea of tracking risk. So rather than just thinking about risk on one occasion and saying your risk is X, we see risk as a fluid, non-static thing that changes over time, and it can change minute by minute, day to day, week to week. So being able to check in on where risk is, and that's a person's self-rated risk, so them saying how likely they think it is they're going to die by suicide, becomes a very important part of the narrative. And having a model that does that is very important for a couple of reasons. It's written there on a piece of paper, so you automatically check through things. Whereas if you're doing it in a face-to-face dialogue, asking a person about risk all the time you can feel like you're being intrusive, like you're bringing up something that the person isn't thinking about, and you're anxious now that you're putting it in their head or raising an issue that they're not connected with at that moment in time. And they can feel like, my God, they keep asking me about this. So when it's written on a form, and the person can see that it's just part of the process, the procedure, it allows a bit of freedom to kind of say, well, if it's not there today, that's okay. You just asked anyway, and we'll move on then. And it feels a little bit different, I think, for both therapist and client, that permission to go into the question, and if it's not relevant that time, then you just navigate away from it. That's fine.
Yeah. And like that's a questionnaire that you would use each session, I guess, so that there's that.
So the CAMS has a particular tracking form that's used at each subsequent session, and then an outcome form when you get to the resolution of suicidality. And it tracks risk and kind of keeps an eye on your treatment goals. So is the stuff that you agreed to work on actively being helped, and are we reducing your suicide risk by looking at it? And if not, why? Are we not looking at the right stuff? Is it not working? So there's quite an active process of ensuring that what you're doing is meeting those issues that are most relevant to the person's suicidality.
Yeah. That sounds so important, because we might be making assumptions about, oh, right, we're having all these conversations, we're getting right into stuff, and it might not be having any correlation with the risk at all.
I was reading some really interesting research. Lambert is one of the key people on this, looking at how bad we are at telling when we're not doing a good job. Okay. And it turns out we think we're all fabulous.
Right, yes.
And we are terrible at predicting and telling when our therapy is going bad.